Welcome back to Q Dads. It's me, Ste, and yes, episode 3 of Severance has given us a few more questions, as to be expected. But was this episode a little bit slower than the rest? Now, right off the bat, I have a crazy theory, and we wanted to front load this video with it. Now, my previous theory got a lot of hate, which I'm fine with, but please, if you do comment to tell me I'm right or wrong, please tell me your theories, because Ben and I love to hear them and we always respond back in the comments when we can. Now, I want to talk more about the end, but the scene with Mark having both innie and outie combined, and the fact the brainwaves were on different frequencies, made me think, could this be something to do with quantum mechanics? Ben pointed out also that Gemma is a bit like Schrodinger's cat, as she's alive to the innies but dead to the outies. Could the innie actually be created using quantum entanglement or something like that? Then, as they are observed, that link is broken and then they can do manipulation on the innies. That's just a quick explanation of what my theory is, just broken down into the too long didn't read, for lack of a better word there. So please hang on, because at the very end I break this down into much more detail and you don't want to miss that. Now, for me, this episode stems around 3 main talking points. One being the fact that does Miss Cobell know the security guard of Helena? The fact we've been introduced to the mammalian nursery and the whole kind of purpose of that. And then finally, which is what we're going to touch on right now, has Mark successfully merged the innie and the outie? So the episode ended with the fact that Mark has gone through a process to successfully merge both his innie life and at least the memories of both versions. And in the last kind of few moments of that scene, we see the integration of his memories, which is all to do with the original opening when Mark entered the second floor. What does this actually tell us? So for me, it kind of highlights the fact that Mark is now going to be tormented with the memories of his innie and his outie. He is now going to have the memories of both versions of himself merged into one, meaning that the innie version will know more about Gemma and the connection they have, as well as the outie realising the truth behind the severed floor. Are we going to see a lot more of Mark and Gemma's life before the supposed crash? But what about if Mark actually opened up a way of communicating and both versions of Mark will become merged into one person with the ability to flick back and forth? So one day, for example, Mark may be able to know what's going on and relay information to some of his colleagues like Helena and Irvin. And yes, I say Helena because it's pretty much confirmed that Helena is within the lift door in the last episode. This may also work with the relationship of Mark and his sister if his innie version becomes active on the outside. This then begins to travel along the route of split personalities. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think both versions of Mark are now one, or will he still have to explore his memories through the use of the machine he was hooked up to? Now, my final question on this little bit here is, what happens when he goes back into the elevator? Do the systems know something is wrong, or does it now simply do nothing? As we can clearly see the 2 sets of brainwaves, surely the system would notice that the 2 brainwaves are aligned here, which then made me think, the severed floor is a bit bonkers really. And is that because they're having to constantly keep a different frequency resonating throughout in order for the innies to stay present? Are we talking magnets or something here? As clearly once they leave certain doors, they instantly switch back. But also the fact they work on different frequencies, could this be the thing that makes them all a little bit weird and essentially changes their personalities, a bit like how Dylan is completely different? Let me know your thoughts. Now I want to talk about that scene that we saw where Helena, who was confronting Miss Cobell after essentially trying to get her job back. Now although she lays down her demands, Helena actually then agreed to get in touch with the board through Natalie and invited Miss Cobell to come and chat, but it wasn't until the last scene where we see Helena's security guard and the camera seem to focus in on that person before then going back to Miss Cobell, who turned and walked away. So we have to ask ourselves, why? For me, one of the main reasons is the connection of Miss Cobell has to this guard, potentially an ex-husband or an ex-partner, and yet this security guard is obviously severed without the knowledge of what's happening, similar to season 1 where we saw the pregnant lady get severed to give birth to a child. Because this guard was also confused, but with a smile, of Helena's just seconds before this. Does she know this anyway? Is she playing a game and keeping many cards close to her chest? Is this what is happening now, and that's why Miss Cobell didn't want to talk to the board? Because she knows the power they have and the ability and the fact that a family member or a previous relationship is now working with Lumen? Or was it simply the realisation that if she went against the board, she would lose more than she already has? And then of course we head over to the nursery. the mammalian nursery, where it was a very weird thing, and I've got so many questions from this, from the offset. One, when their day ends, what do their outies think, considering the fact that they are now dirty, poorly dressed, and obviously smelling of goat? Do they know what they do? And of course, do we know what they do? So when we saw all of these workers, I asked myself, why were there so many of them? So why does that department need so many employees, yet MDR only needs 4? Are they there just purely nursing the goats, or is there something more sinister? And of course, how long have they been there? Because, like I mentioned it, they did used to have wellness with Miss Casey until she supposedly retired. Now, the question Mark should have asked here, and he didn't, and it really bugs me, is when did she retire? As I wonder if this was a previous version of Miss Casey, as she has been dead for 2 years. Now, for me, one of the most interesting parts of the episode spanned around Dylan and his wife. First, again, seeing the clear difference between outie and innie versions of Dylan. Weirdly, this is exactly what Kia was trying to solve with the Severance program, a person not being weighed down by outside factors. But what if it's more than that? What if the process of creating and maintaining the innies actually messes with them? Hence why those in the mammalian nursery were all a bit crazy, and why Dylan is so different. Outie Dylan lacks confidence, for a better word, whereas innie Dylan thinks he's the shit. It's such a stark contrast. Gretchen was even surprised when innie Dylan was considered a strong worker. Now, a quick spin here. Why are Lumens so focused on Dylan? Could he be the next project? Because my wife actually pointed out something really interesting the other day, and that was how Pete was almost abandoned just before season 1. And didn't Mark say they had finished the project? And Pete was the manager of the room then? Only for Mark to then become the manager, and then Cold Harbour is resting on him. So could Dylan be the next one in line? Maybe the stuff around Gemma is just a red herring, and actually it's something in each severed innie they need. Because remember, the people from 5X never completed quota, whereas the MDR team seemed to complete it each time. And then finally, I wonder if we're about to see our first affair, as I genuinely think Gretchen will fall for innie Dylan, which then made me question, is that even cheating? I don't really know, but being serious here for a moment, would Gretchen potentially want to find a way to replace outie Dylan with innie Dylan? I know it sounds crazy, but this series is all about twists and turns. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts on that. I also did want to shout out Natalie and Milchek's actors. The scene where Milchek got a race swapped Kia was downright disturbing, and I love how clearly both characters were not happy. But Natalie had to say she had the same done for her, and it was all wonderful, all while you could see the pain in her eyes. And for me, personally, it almost felt like a dig at the current world, with CEOs and board members not really understanding the people and employees they deal with, and make the most disingenuous painting ever. It just feels so belittling to Milchek's brilliant character. And again, I wonder if this is a dig at the current set of Hollywood films, where the laziness to just race swap a character rather than writing or creating something new and better. Don't forget Ben Stiller's Tropic Thunder, where they also take shots at the norm as a way to highlight these horrible things. Either way, I have to say, have we just seen the start of Milchek's character betraying Lumen? Will he finally start to form a bond with Mark and the gang? Maybe he will be key in the events leading to Gemma, as clearly Miss Cobell also thought Milchek would be a weak link. I just love how no character really feels safe at Lumen. They're all too scared to do anything. Now, just before I dig a little bit more into my theory, Irv had a nice little conversation with Felicia this week, and she explains how the door is the door to export and how they used to go there. I think this now basically confirms the theory that others have mentioned on Reddit and around comments and everywhere, that Irv is really an old employee and has almost been recycled in a way. Hence why you saw the door before. It's either that or maybe outie Irv used to work on the 7th floor but wasn't severed. Or could Irv be similar to Miss Casey? At the last time we saw her, she was heading into the export lift. Could Irv originally have been someone else's Cold Harbour project? Could this tie back to Bert? Hence their strong connection. I don't know, but it does seem like plot points from season 1 are finally starting to weave their way back in to season 2. Now, talking of plot points, we also got a cell saying the last time she saw Miss Casey, she was alive. Now, is that just a passing comment or a very clever play on words, indicating she's in fact dead and that this Miss Casey is something new? Honestly, in my head, it's feeling more like Gemma lied or was kidnapped, or, as I speculated, incapacitated somehow and never actually died. Either way, we're starting to spin off now on a few threads, and I'm wondering, are they ultimately all connected or separate? And those threads are Dylan's innie and outie with their connection to Gretchen, Irv and what I'm calling the magic door, and finally we have Mark and Gemma's thread. Now, I bet you're asking, why have I not mentioned Helly and Helena? And that's because so far this season, it's almost like they're just outside of these threads and we don't have a clear path for them, as I don't really get what's going on with them. Right then, if you stuck around to this part in the video, first of all, thank you, and let's finally dig into that theory I mentioned at the start. Now, I'm not going to claim I understand quantum mechanics, as I don't, but we've had a few series on Apple now dive into it, like Dark Matter and Constellation, and this is where it made me think something similar might be happening. As when Mark's being told how memories work, we clearly see his brainwaves on screen, and we clearly see innie Mark's brainwaves, implying both are always there and working. And it's explained how both brains run on different frequencies. So my theory on quantum entanglement part actually comes from the end, where the brainwaves sort of merge. So to me, that looked like two things being linked together, all becoming the same. Now, this all stems from the idea of what if Severance is playing on the quantum mind theory, maybe even meaning innie Mark is just a consciousness strand that was somehow messed with. Again, the theories around quantum mind, how I think I understand it basically, say that how consciousness works isn't really comprehensible by normal maths, but actually the neurons within our brains are in states of entanglement and superpositions. The reason this then ties back is because what if they merely alter one of these strands in the mind, for a lack of a better word, and actually reintegration is merely putting the strand back into entanglement, which is what makes innie and outie Mark become one again. I'm not 100% sure, but it feels like this could fit into how the innies are created. Let me know your thoughts on that theory. Yes, it is a bit crazy, but here at QDads, we like to throw out these crazy theories. So yes, in the comments, ridicule me all you want, but once you've done that and you've told me I'm stupid, tell me your theory, as me and Ben, like I said at the start, really like to dig into them and talk about them. And at some point soon, we'd like to bring your theories to the channel where we discuss them and give you a chance to actually build on it in the comments yourself if you want, or for us to try and disprove your theories like you do to us. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on that big theory. So finally, my questions to you. Do you think Milchek will betray Lumen? Do you think innie Dylan will start to sway Gretchen? And finally, do you think Mark will suffer how Pete did? Don't forget to like and subscribe, as it really helps us to grow. And also, in case you didn't know, that was fucking Brienne of Tarth. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next week with something new.